Hallo und willkommen! Ich bin Meister Lehnsherr. This is Jesselyn and this is VlogDave, and today we're talking about life in Germany versus life in Canada, because Jesselyn has been living in Germany for quite a while now. How long?
Since 2017.
Since 2017! And it's 2020, the year of doom. So anyway, years of experience, and we're going to discuss it today.
Yes.
All on board, what should I do?
Ah, ich weiß.
So what is your life, what has your life in Germany been like?
I would say overall positive, but different.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yes. So yeah, some points I have is greetings in Germany are different. For example, when someone says hello to you in Canada, they'll often say, how are you? But they don't actually want to know how you're doing. It's really just used as a greeting. And by the time you turn around to answer them, they've already walked across the room. It doesn't matter anymore. You feel a little bit slighted. But in Germany, I find no one will ask how are you unless they actually want to know that.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually a point I made about America as well. When I went there, it confused me because no one really cared how I really was, even though they asked me how I was as a greeting, basically. I mean, in German we say "Hi, wie geht's" as well. But Dave, do we really expect to hear about some people's well-being in life, or is it more of a greeting as well?
I think as Germans we rather expect that, but it's a different approach to small talk, definitely. I think we would definitely, it's a mixture of a greeting and small talk in Germany, whether it seems to be just a greeting in Canada. So,
well, I know it's like when we say it in Canada, we also, if you're not doing well, unless we really know you, we don't really want to hear about it. As mean as that sounds, like if you come in and say, hey, how are you? And you say, oh, you know what? I'm really doing crappy today. It's not going so well. They're going to look at you like you're a little weird.
Oh,
like, why are you oversharing? This is a bit much.
I suppose so. In Germany, I mean, depends on the situation, right? If you're with friends or something, then you are more likely to explain your life than as if you are with clerks at a store or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's different too. Yeah, so like your friends, we will say like, hi, how are you? They want to know, but in a grocery store, it's just a greeting.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So then the next point is smiling.
Smiling.
I have found this to be a bit difficult to navigate because in Canada, it's really normal if you're walking down the street and you see somebody, like even if you don't know them, you'll smile at them as you walk by, like kind of a hey, whatever, and you smile. I've had it here though where I look at someone and I smile and they suddenly act like I freaked them out a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I'm just trying to be friendly.
yeah.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because in Germany it's often because that's how people flirt sometimes.
Oh no.
If you just sit, for example, in a train and smile at someone randomly, then they might think that you're flirting with them. Maybe it's not universal, but that's how I
flirt.
See it. No, that's how I see it. I don't flirt.
Ever.
Ever.
Yeah, I mean, definitely true. I can also agree on that. That is my experience as well, as a fellow German. Yeah, sometimes people might think, okay, oh, that person actually smiled at me. Do I know them and just can't remember?
Oh yeah.
You know, it might confuse them because of that, yeah. But
and some people say Germans don't smile at all, that they're always super serious. But that, I mean, I said this before in other videos, but it's mostly if we go about our daily lives and just have like something on our minds, think about something, then we're not just running around smiling constantly. Yeah. So it doesn't mean necessarily that we're in a bad mood or that we are unfriendly. It's just that we are thinking about something else or like going somewhere and thinking about that. Yeah. And well, not everyone's smiling all the time.
Sometimes I feel like we Germans, we have like a tendency to having a resting face without intending to look like that. But yeah, you know, we're happy on the inside.
Well, I think it's one of those things that was confusing because where I live in Germany, staring is a thing. People will just stare. And so my way to diffuse the awkwardness of being stared at, because then in Canada, alternatively, staring at someone is considered rude, or they think something weird is going on, so people will just stare at you. And so I go, oh, maybe they know me, and then I smile, and then suddenly I'm the weird one because I'm smiling, yet they were staring at me. So it's a strange dynamic.
Yes, but I mean, the smiling thing, the staring thing, sorry, It's something I hear over and over and over from foreigners. So it must be true, even though I don't notice it myself as much. Do you, Dave? Staring?
I mean, I usually don't stare at people when I'm like going by train or something, but yeah, it's like it's weird, really, like sort of an approval thing. Like when a person stares at you and you notice that, then you stare back. We both immediately stop staring at each other.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, really awkward.
Then you look away, like, oh.
Yeah, and that people might not have like a negative intent at all. It's just like people are curious, I guess.
They caught me.
And sometimes when I go by train and I have my like Zelda hat on and stuff, like my cap, and people notice that, and they might also know Zelda, for instance. Of course, they might look at that and like, you know, notice me, senpai.
Not approvingly.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, pretty much.
Not approvingly.
Not approving.
Yeah, true. Also, I think what is the definition of staring for you? How long is a look? When does a look become a stare?
I think it's not just about the length of time. It's also about the intensity. So like if you look at someone, you can tell they're not exactly focused on you, but when they're staring is when they're actually, you can tell this person is fixated on your movement or that they're actually looking at you. So I would say, especially if you make eye contact and they proceed to continue to make eye contact, then it's staring. Okay. Because then you're just looking at each other.
Interesting. While you talk, I'll fix the camera real quick because it's moving too much for my taste. Okay. So what's the next?
The next topic is customer service in Germany. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Elaborate.
I will elaborate, yes. Typically, like in Canada, if you talk to someone who's like a city worker or to someone who works with the public, their typical response is to be really polite to you. In fact, if they approach you really coldly or rudely, it's often even from your employer would be seen as a real big negative point. Like we really discourage being cold, I guess, when people talk to you. But I have already had it happen in Germany where I call someone or I guess some sort of service number and they almost act mad about the fact that I dared call them while they were working on being in customer service. I don't know, like I called a doctor's office once, for example, and because they had the same name as another doctor's office, and she got annoyed and mad at me that I dared call her and disturb her. Okay. Yeah. But it's also just the same in just general customer service, like when you...
General customer service.
Yes, general customer service. When you go to, say, a shop and you talk to, say, someone stocking a shelf, you're trying to find something, and usually you can approach them and say, excuse me, could you tell me where that is? In Canada, they'll actually stop and like show you where the item is, and they'll be really polite, whereas here, they kind of just brush you off and point you in that direction and then go about what they were doing. Like, they can't really be bothered.
Do you mind doing this side?
Where do you need to take it?
I'm gonna take over. Something that doesn't necessarily have too much to do with that, but that came to mind now is what is like the tipping culture like in Canada? Like because I think in America, you know, you are pretty much meant to tip a person, whether that is completely voluntary in Germany. And I don't know what that is like in Canada.
Well, we have a different system. I think I've heard, I don't know if it's still the case, but I've heard in some places in the US that, say for example, servers don't actually get paid by the hour, like a minimum wage, and that's why they really live off tips. In Canada, because I did waitress for a little while there, it's mandatory we all get minimum wage, and then on top of that, tips. Okay. And so tips are... There's some restaurants that have policies that if there's more than 8 people, then there's a mandatory tip added onto the bill, but you're supposed to tell the customer so they don't double tip you. But usually it depends on the cost of the meal, how fancy the restaurant is, and then of course the quality of the service. If the server was really terrible, then you don't tip them. But usually it's like a 5 to 15%. Lunchtime's 5%, dinner's 15%, and then when it comes to certain things like haircuts, like you get your hair done, tipping is also optional, but not always a thing. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, that's how it works with customer service with tipping.
All right. What's the next point?
The next point is bicycle infrastructure in Germany is really well set up compared to Canada. We just don't have it really. Like, for example, the city I'm from Winnipeg. They have streets. They have like some bicycle paths, and they just kind of start in the middle of nowhere and then end in the middle of nowhere. So if you're trying to ride your bike somewhere, you just kind of, you're on your own. You got to ride in the street now. Because you're not allowed to ride on sidewalks in Canada. I don't know if it's all over in Canada, but at least in Winnipeg, for example, you'll get a ticket. Only children under 10 years old can ride on the sidewalk.
Oh, shit.
So you're stuck to drive on the road, and then, of course, the drivers don't keep their distance, so that's a bit frustrating. But in Germany, I find that the bicycle infrastructure with, like, the red bricks and knowing where you can go is a lot better. It's a lot more set up.
Even though, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a similar rule in Germany in regards to kids driving on sidewalks. I think it's allowed up to a certain age, but then, like, after a certain age, they are also they need to drive on the bicycle lane. And I totally agree. Like, we have a good infrastructure of that, even though that doesn't mean that Germans might use it all the time. They might still like also drive on the street itself. And annoy car drivers and stuff. But you know, that's a different topic.
But I mean, I guess further to the point, it's just the general traveling infrastructure. Like, we also, for example, driving on the Autobahn in Germany is for me a bit stressful because it's just too fast.
Oh, yeah.
Because in Canada, you can't drive. I think the highest speed limit I've ever seen is 110 in Saskatchewan.
Cute.
Yeah. But, as for example, I drive on the Autobahn maybe 110 kilometers an hour, and for me that's getting a little spicy. It's getting a little fast. It's too dangerous. I like stopping distance. I'm always worried, what if a deer jumps out and then I'm going to smoke a deer? And
smoke the deer.
Hit the deer.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Yes.
Or we'll smoke the deer.
We'll smoke your deer, yeah. Then the transportation as well in the cities is better.
Than Canada?
No, in Germany.
No, but better than Canada.
Better than Canada,
We have such a typical German term for that, like public transportation, which is der öffentliche Personennahverkehr.
That's very German.
Which is like, even just like der Personennahverkehr is like the personal near traffic. Yeah,
basically.
it's, you know, near distance traffic.
Yes. Well, I find it's much better in Germany. Our bus systems, for example, like again, I'm thinking of the city I'm from, not great. To get maybe what would typically take you half an hour in a car will take you 2 hours by bus.
Oh, damn.
And they take like arbitrary routes, and we have no S or U-Bahn. We were supposed to at some point, they didn't put it in. But basically the idea, yeah. And then if you want to leave the cities, you can't unless you have a car. Or you take the Greyhound, but they don't go everywhere.
Greyhound?
Greyhound is a bus.
Ah, Greyhound bus, yes, I heard of this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So whenever you might be in Germany and you see the abbreviation ÖPNV, ÖPNV, pretty much that stands for der öffentliche Personennahverkehr, meaning an information on like near distance traveling. That is available there. There are like bus routes and stuff. So
and Ö is this little O with the dots.
Yeah, the
just
umlaut.
for your information.
Like in
I was sitting here wondering, I'm like, is it O with umlaut or U?
Yeah. Can you say Ö and Ü and Yes.
Very good.
Nice.
So I suppose next up then. Next point.
The next point is the coldness, and by that I don't mean by temperature, because that's already something completely different. Of course, where I'm from, physical cold is much colder in winter. But yeah, when it comes to coldness, I mean by personality. So when I first came to Germany, I found that the personality or the approach that people have was relatively short and cold. Like they're very kind of holding you at a distance. But I have come to find that it's actually not that bad, and I find it almost comfortable now that you don't get such an artificial approach from people. If someone doesn't like you, they just don't talk to you, whereas in Canada they'll be kind of passive aggressive, and they'll still talk to you, but then they'll just talk shit about you behind your back.
I mean that probably still happens in Germany, to be quite honest. Less than gossiping.
Yeah. But at least I find with this cold approach that people have is only when you don't know them. But I've actually made friends now in Germany, and it completely disappears when you're actually friends with them. Then they all want to hug you, and that's completely foreign for me.
Hugging?
Yeah.
Hugging, it's such a... We don't do that.
Yeah,
We hug family, and that's about it.
There's not so much like a gray zone in between, right? It's like
no, it's either
black and white.
yeah, it's like either they don't know you, so they're not going to hug you or be around you, or they know you and they're your friend and they, you know, are really nice to you and they hug you. And,
yeah. I've heard that like someone saying that about Germans in general. Like it's really hard to get in touch with them, like on a deeper level. But once you have gotten in touch with them, you know, it turns out like Germans might be friends for life because you know.
They just keep in contact, and it's like if they continue the friendship, it's because it meant something to them. Yeah. So
because it's effort.
Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna make the effort, might as well like it. The next point that I would have would be the bureaucracy in Germany. Oh my lordy, it's just.
Yes, elaborate.
Elaborate. Okay. What I find to be particularly frustrating is that everything has its own like office, like an Amt. Like there's always an office for something, and they don't seem to communicate with each other, because you'll go to one building and they say, listen, we need this and this and this form, and you're, okay, good, oh, we'll get these things, and then you go to the place where they told you need to go, you go there and they say, no, we don't do that, you have to, no, they have to give us this form, and you're like, yeah, but they're not going to do it unless you give them that. No, that's not how we do this. And in Canada, what would normally happen in a situation like that is that they would actually, especially if it's a place that they often have to work with, like between departments, they'll just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I have a person here and they're saying this, what it actually needs to go on, and then you solve it right there on the phone. It does not happen here. No one picks up a phone. They just tell you, listen, you need this in this form. It's not possible. If you don't have it, get out. More or less.
I mean, there's even like a meme or a viral clip of that. You might know Asterix and
Obelix, das Haus, das Verrückte macht.
Yeah.
Yes,
which is pretty much about the Passierschein A38. The well, I don't know what that is in English actually.
Some sort of form
that they need.
Form A38, and it's pretty much that in a nutshell. Like they are in a really, really big building with many floors and corridors and stuff. And yeah, it definitely is a good depiction of what that is like in Germany for the most part.
Maybe that was related to German bureaucracy. I mean, maybe French bureaucracy is weird as well. I don't know. I wouldn't know, but that is definitely a very good depiction of that.
Yeah, and I mean, even to this day, like departments, like offices, are actually doing stuff like that on paper instead of doing that digitally, and that makes it even harder to exchange things. And what also comes in addition to that is like Germany consists of 16 separate states, German states, die Bundesländer, and each Bundesland pretty much has their own way of dealing with things here and there. And it's sometimes, you know, the federalism of Germany can be annoying. It also has its pros, but sometimes, you know, just sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I find because there is so many rules about paperwork, you often get lost in loopholes where it suddenly turns out no one will agree that this is their job. Like, oh, it's not my department, it's not my job. And then, well, then whose job is it? No one seems to really know.
Yeah.
And then there's also the issue of everything being done on paper. It's not real if it's not on paper. And so, for example, if you need to contact, say, a university for something by email, actually a friend of mine told me this. She said that she emailed a department at our university, and instead of responding to her email, they actually printed out her email with their response and mailed it to her.
Oh my god.
So it's
Yeah, I think the Finanzamt, the finance office, the tax office, they require a lot of printed stuff still as well. I suppose because electronic things can be deleted and lost, and if they have like a physical copy of something, I mean, that can be lost as well, obviously, but maybe it's, I don't know, it's very old-fashioned.
Yeah, I was told this is left over from like the Prussian era or something, like this old school, everything's on paper.
Yeah, might be.
Yeah, that's what I was told. I don't know. I don't know the
seems to be like a tradition of sorts. But yeah, it is really strange. I don't know. And sometimes.
I mean, we do have bureaucracy in Canada as well, which can also be a headache. The difference in Canada is that usually it takes a long time when something has to go by mail, for example, because when you send a letter in Germany, it'll probably get there within the next 2 days. Whereas in Canada, you might not get it for 2 weeks to 3 weeks to who knows when. And if they lose it, well, then sucks to be you, I guess.
And I don't know if that is similar in Canada, but for instance in Germany we also really differentiate between Werktage and Wochentage. Like,
yeah, but we do that too.
Werktage are like working days, and Wochentage are the days in a week, like 7 days. And you know, sometimes forms and that kind of stuff, they can differentiate between those things. So be aware of that, definitely. And yeah.
And yeah.
Yes.
And
And
yeah.
yes.
And yes, very much so.
Indeed.
Next up.
The next point is the cost of living. In Canada, it depends. Like the housing market, for example, we pay a lot less for houses compared to Germany. But in general, just for everyday costs, our apartments are probably comparable in price depending on where you are. But the cost of food is really expensive. So healthy food, I find in Germany, is really cheap by comparison. Whereas in Canada, if you want to get healthy vegetables and stuff like that, it's more expensive and often not as nice a quality. Because a lot of our food is imported, and so they have to do this artificial ripening with like ethylene and stuff like that when they actually get the product. So you'll get a tomato, for example, from the grocery store, and you'll cut into it, and it's white inside.
Ew.
And it's really upsetting because it tastes like nothing.
What the hell?
Or eggs that are pale. It's no good.
Oh no.
But in Germany, I find you get a better quality food product for a lot less money.
Oh, I'm glad we do. That sounds
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, actually, German food's pretty good. But the difference also with cost of living is that everything else in Canada is a bit cheaper, though. When it comes to clothing, for example, it's a lot cheaper. You can get a pair of jeans for $20.
Okay.
Germany, not the case.
What about rent?
Rent depends where you live. We have different rent laws, but I know where I'm from, it's basically become really expensive to get an apartment. You can't really afford it by yourself on minimum wage.
In Germany?
In Canada.
In Canada, sorry.
The cost of apartments in Canada is going up, so it's actually cheaper to buy a house in Canada than it is to rent an apartment. Because
wow.
your mortgage payments every month will be less than your monthly rent.
Oh damn.
Yeah. And you get more space, so.
I don't know actually what that's like in Germany, if the mortgage, if that would be the same.
Mortgage payments being...
Yeah.
Well, I think generally the houses here are more expensive. Like I've seen some houses in my city where that house is for, like when it's for sale in my city in Germany, would be €500,000 to €1 million. Whereas that same house with that amount of property in some regions of Canada, you could probably sell for 300,000 Canadian dollars.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
So just a lot less.
I have read some statistics and heard about that as well. Like the share or the percentage of German families that own a house instead of like paying rent and stuff or living in a flat apartment is really low. Like in Germany in general. You know, owning a flat, like an apartment or owning a house is comparatively rarer
Seldom.
to, for instance, say America. And that is also what I feel like when I see like people living in America in videos every now and then. Of course, you know, sometimes it's also like those show-off persons that actually say, okay, oh, look at my house and stuff. But,
Look at my horse. My horse
my horse
is
is amazing.
amazing.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes it really fits. There are many Germans that also have a house, for instance, that they own, but still the share is quite low comparatively, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can also get, I mean, of course, in Canada, it depends on where you are. Like, there's some places I saw in Saskatchewan, you get like 50 acres for 250,000.
Oh shit.
Of course, the problem is that there's maybe nowhere to go around there in the middle of nowhere. But,
How much is an acre again?
oh gosh, I don't know.
Tell us, Germans.
Oh, I
please.
don't know, to be honest. That's the thing with the Canadian measuring system. We have a terrible mixture of metric and imperial, and I can't convert between the two. So I know what a
Awesome.
kilometer is, but I don't know what a mile is. But
Why
then,
would you do that?
but a hectare and an acre, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, hectare we also use in German, but acre.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we have something.
I think an acre is a little bit bigger than a hectare. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's a bit bigger.
But you don't use Fahrenheit, do you?
No, unless it's a swimming pool.
Really?
Yeah, swimming pools will use Fahrenheit, but
What
for
the hell?
I don't know why either. It's just that's what happens when a lot of your media comes from the U.S. You have a lot of like exchange with just imperial, but then the metric system for everything else.
And what's really weird actually is that Fahrenheit was a German physicist, and you know, it pretty much only gets used by 6 countries in the world, as far as I know, excluding Germany. We
of that.
use Celsius, who was Swedish.
I thought that.
Swedish physicist, actually.
Oh, okay.
The more you know.
Oh, fancy. And Oh yeah, so the last point I have is the fizzy water.
Ugh.
That's this, yeah, it's a shock when you're not used to it. So in Canada, we just usually drink, like, you can get fizzy water, but the standard is just, well, I guess they call it flat water here. But for us, I just call that normal water, because normal water isn't fizzy. And so that's definitely shocking when you first come here. It's already happened to a couple of my family members where they first arrived, and of course you're thirsty after a flight, and they go to buy a water bottle not knowing any German, and they buy something and go to chug it down, and then I'm just like spraying it out of their nose and their face and coughing and freaking out because suddenly it's fizzing.
They must have known, right?
No, they didn't know, because this is not really, like, when you go to the grocery store in Canada to buy, like, if you're buying bottled water, I usually just drink from the tap, but if you're buying bottled water, it's usually never fizzy.
Yeah.
It's pretty much always flat water, normal water. I'll say it, it's normal water.
Jesselyn!
It's normal.
Jesselyn!
Yes.
You want some fizzy water?
No!
No, go away.
I'm used to it now, but when I first had it, I always thought, man, it's almost like, I don't know, it's strange. I've gotten used to it, I can accept it now. It just doesn't, for me, it doesn't feel as refreshing, because you can't, like, if you're really thirsty and it's really hot, and I'm usually way too hot here.
You know, I can tolerate it, but...
You can't drink a lot of it. That's what my experience was.
You
For
get like
example,
a stomach ache. And...
when I started working out more, then I needed to drink like a whole lot of water. I wanted to, but I'm going around twice, which is not allowed usually. But I have to, because I didn't know where to go. There we go. Anyway, I had to drink a lot more water, and I just couldn't chug an entire bottle of fizzy water. But with still water, that's quite easy.
Yes.
Oh, Jesselyn, by the way, do you know the German colloquial term for tap water? Like
Leitungswasser.
Yeah,
What?
Leitungswasser is the general term, but we
Okay.
also have
General
like I guess a pretty common colloquial term for that.
I don't know.
No? Which
No.
is Kranberger.
I want to get rid of this
That
keychain.
sounds
It
like
makes noise
cranberry.
all the time.
It sounds like cranberry, yeah, but it's Kranberger for der Kran, the
The faucet.
faucet. And Berger, like the suffix in that, is pretty much common for many German water brands. Like you might have Berger water or Berger, you know, like many of those companies end in Berger or Berg or something like that. So Kranberger means, you know, yeah, just drinking like
water.
under the faucet right away.
Interesting.
Kranberger, didn't you know?
No, I have never heard that. Maybe
I would
it's-
not assume that was water. If someone said Kranberger, I would assume it was like a juice or something, or
Yeah.
a beer. Yes, if it's not juice, probably beer.
Dave lives in the not south, but more middle of Germany, I suppose.
West Germany, actually.
West Germany.
The Sauerland region,
Yeah.
which is close to the Ruhrgebiet, the Ruhr area, like near Dortmund.
Isn't that near there's like a volcano or the volcanic region?
Yeah, the Vulkaneifel.
Yeah, and in the Eifel, there's like an ancient volcano there.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that's where they actually have a lot of that medium Wasser, like this fizzy water.
yeah.
I was told comes from that region, and they would take it directly from the source there, where it's carbonated underground. And apparently it's so intense, I was told this, that it could actually burn your throat a little bit.
Oh, shit.
Because the carbonation was so extreme.
Wow.
They actually had to make a law to say, listen, we can't have that much fizz, that's too much. So they had
Don't
to,
have that much
This
fizz.
is too much fizz.
Don't fizz around
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, no.
I wonder, what is it like in Canada, in Canada,
In Canada.
the Kingdom of Canada,
Yes.
with water in restaurants and stuff? Is
Oh.
it for free, or do
Yes.
you have to pay for it?
Well, it depends. If you just ask for a glass of water, they'll give you a glass of tap water. It's free. In fact, like you can. I've done this already. Like I'll be out rollerblading or something, and I'll go into say a McDonald's and ask for a glass of water, and they just hand you a cup with water, and you never have to pay for it.
In McDonald's? Here in Germany?
No, in
In
Canada.
Canada.
No, it's a nice thing in Canada. If you just stop somewhere, if you're really thirsty, and you say, "Hey, can I have a glass of water?" It just goes without saying that they'll give you a glass of water, and you don't have to pay for it.
Interesting.
Yeah. The only time you have to pay is if you specifically want bottled water.
Oh wait, you cannot. Can you go in here? Huh? There we go.
So yes.
No.
That is this. I think that was actually a law that was something that happened in the 70s. I was told that somehow it became the standard that water was free. But we also have so much fresh water, so it's not that big of a deal.
Well, oh, what are those two doing on the left there?
Chilling in the field.
I wonder.
Wonder how.
I wonder why. Having sexual intercourse under the blue sky. Maybe that's what that.
And all that I can see is
just the PP. Oh no! I'm so sorry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this list versus living in Germany versus living in Canada. I hope that was interesting to you guys.
Yeah.
And well, thanks for joining me, guys. Check out Jesselyn's channels and social media, and check out VlogDave's channel in the video description as well. And apart from that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to get Germanized. Goodbye and auf Wiedersehen. There you go. You did it. Nice.